Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. By which I mean the side-to-side thing, because this is AutoPan. Let's go and have a look at it. Once I'm finished doing that, we'll talk to you about some other things I'm working on. But this is AutoPan. That's this week's plugin. So this was a request from somebody who was looking for this kind of thing, and I thought that I could maybe do a Airwindowsy style version of it. So we got our rate, of course. It goes down to pretty much 0. It's extremely slow. We've got our dry wet. Phase is interesting. Here's what phase does. If phase is exactly in the middle, we have a tremolo. Also note that this is a kind of an organic LFO. This is taken from what's actually in Galactic, which you're also hearing. That was last week. And you can hear it's just a tiny bit irregular. That's randomized each time. So what phase does is, if you have it all the way to one side or the other, we have full-on left-right AutoPan. Same result here. The wide control cuts down the mid-channel. That affects our pan law. Otherwise, it's it doesn't go up to full volume for both in the middle, but it follows the sine curve in the LFO. And if we start turning wide up, we'll get an increasingly canceled out effect. All we're hearing now is the side channel. And what we're hearing now is basically mid, except for that it's a stereo track. So what does this mean if we have this phase control that's not just middle or the sides? What this means is if you lean it to one side or the other from the center, we'll get sort of a circular effect going on, where it will come at you from the side that the phase is leaning to, swoop through the center, and then go back into the distance again. And the closer to center you get, the more you'll get to total cancellation. Exactly 1/4 of the way over is a kind of traveling motion, and this is where wide comes into its own. Because it'll bring stuff out a little bit past the width of the speakers, in a sense. So we can have a very striking stereo wide AutoPan-y effect going on with a lot of variation, and it's also slightly randomized because of the speed of the cycle isn't going to be exactly the same every single time. So if you started this up on a track and had a bunch of these going on, every time you play through it's going to be slightly different. Every time you instantiate the plugin, it's going to start the random off slightly differently. So And then of course the what we do with it here, you can always dial that back with dry wet. And it'll just make subtle changes. So that's going to be relatively normal, but we can add just a little touch of something in there. Or indeed make it go quite extreme. Or when we turn wide up, whatever we've got going through here is accentuating the side quite strongly. So if we're doing mostly dry and then we bring in just a little bit of wet, all we're really adding is side. So we had a bit of a kind of spacey wandering going on. And we're only affecting the side channel. The center channel is not being modulated here. And like you can hear, it's not really doing anything much other than widening things, but it's nice to include a little bit of phase, and it's nice to not have wide be completely all cranked out. And we can take something that is a very spacey kind of motion going on there, and then bring in just a little bit of it. For our effect. And I can also demonstrate all of this in another way. Namely, I can just throw in a sine wave. Hope it's not too loud for you. It's kind of loud, but not insanely loud. And in doing that, you can hear the tremolo effect, the full-on side-to-side thing, or what we get when we include wide. And there you have it. So that is, here, let me get back my regular camera. Boop. That's AutoPan. Go ahead and download it if you think it'll be useful. It's not especially fancy plugin, even though it's got some of your Airwindowsy kind of things going on. But, you know, I was asked for that kind of thing, so I thought I would give it a shot. And who knows, maybe it will sit. Some of these things, I can be asked for them by just one person. And the idea is there might be thousands of people out there who use Airwindows plugins, but if only 1% of those people really find it useful, that's like 10 people. That's good enough. That's worthwhile. One of the things I'm working on, which I ought to get into this coming Monday, I think I'll do a little bit more of that, is we're digging into this machine again. And I have been measuring and testing it and running test signals and stuff through it, which you'll be able to hear on Monday as I try to emulate your classic Mackie micro series, the original version, including a nice little detail that I got from a YouTuber going by the name of the Daydream Sound, whose videos I enjoy. He's a chill guy. And he pointed out when I said I was measuring stuff and running my drums and test tones through this, oh, don't go to the main outputs. I measured all of the EQs and things, as you see. And I do still have that, and I might still pursue it, but he said, no, that's not the one. Enter into these channel inserts, just one click in, to get just the insert out off of the channels that you're going into. And that bypasses the pan pots, that bypasses the EQ, that bypasses everything. And you know I did. And I ran test signals through it. Square wave, sines. I distorted the crud out of it. I ran my drums through it. I ran my drums through it about 5 times because I kept forgetting to do things like turn off my console emulation. You know, I forgot to turn off console 7 for the first couple of goes. And eventually I remembered, and I had a nice clean version of my drums going through that hardware box. And man, that's an interesting device. When you study what it does, and I'll show you what it does on Monday, anybody who comes through, when you study what it does, you'll see that it's doing some real interesting things to the waveform, and I feel confident that I can mimic some of those interesting things happening to the waveform algorithmically. It's just that you wouldn't necessarily think to do it if you hadn't studied it the way that I studied it. So we'll get into that later. But for now, that's AutoPan. AutoPan is this week's plugin. I also have a report on the Mac M1 updates, and then I'm getting together with somebody over the long Easter weekend, and we're going to get a process together where I can start turning these things out, and that might take the place of some product releases if this becomes very time-consuming, but that is moving. That is starting to get going. So AutoPan is here now for existing AU and VST users. And I don't know, if you found this super duper... The interesting thing about doing Patreon the way I do it versus subscription services, and I've been following some people's experiences adding subscription services to their stuff, is I just give you the plugins. There is no facility to take them away again if you don't pay. So I can say, hey, if you like this AutoPan plugin, by all means throw another $50 a year onto my Patreon. And we're getting closer and closer to that $2,000 point where I start doing the hardware synth DIY stuff. And that's probably going to be a whole other day a week that I dedicate to doing it. But, you know, since it's Patreon rather than a subscription service, you don't have to. Or if you would prefer to treat this as just a little utility plugin to be downloaded for free, absolutely do that. Absolutely do that. I'll be fine. I'm doing fine. I'm enjoying the work that we're doing, and it's all moving. In theory, it could be moving faster if I had like massive funding, but you know, it's fine. And AutoPan might wind up being useful. Hard to say. Maybe. Who knows? It's just a little utility kind of plugin, and sometimes those are fun to do. And I can never tell which ones are going to be super popular and which ones are not. So I have given up trying. I just do what I like. And hopefully you'll like it too. If you like it extra much, since it is open source, you can build it into your synthesizers and things. Like there are some synthesizer makers who are using Airwindows plugins. Check this one out. See if the features on this are useful for including in your synthesizer. Who knows? Maybe it will come in handy. And I hope you like it. Talk to you later. And see some of you on Monday when I will start working on that Mackie thing that I'm working on. Until then, bye-bye.